Okay, I'm going to go through the preliminary matters so that we can then get started. Again, my name is Magistrate Schaefer, and I'm going to ask if each side are ready to proceed to trial today. First, for the prosecution.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll need you to speak up, please. And for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor, the defense is ready for trial.
All right, thank you. I'm going to begin by asking each side, as I have done, that they're ready for trial. And the judge and scoring panelists have their copies of team rosters, I take it?
I do not have a copy of a roster.
Okay, are the prosecution and defense going to provide us with a team roster?
Yes, Your Honor, we can either screen share it for you to see, or we can type it in the chat for you to refer to, if that would be easier.
I think in the chat would be preferred.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm to confirm that there's no video recording going on, even though we're video recording this, but there's no other persons that are taking a video of this proceeding. I'll have to inform all the teams as well and the gallery members that the Colorado Bar Association may be taking photographs during this process as well. I will ask anyone who is in the gallery or is connected or who is connected with the teams not competing in this competition. Are there anyone that is observing that is not part of these teams? Thank you. I do remind you that no recesses will be allowed with the exception of those granted for any health emergency. Each scoring panelist has any reason to base, hold on a second. I'm to ask each scoring panelist if he or she has any reason to be biased in judging either team. I'm assuming that you can see all the faces. If not, let's all come online so that my scoring panelists can make sure that they can go through a conflicts check. And I will do the same.
No conflict from me, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Or for me as well. Thank you.
Okay, I'm also asked to remind the teams and coaches that any disputes arising out of this competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. I'll remind teams that that compliance with time requirements will be considered in scoring individual performances. I need to confirm that no coach or team member other than the timekeeper is seated with us. And it looks like we have timekeepers as well. And they are as in this video conference as well. All right, I'm going to swear in the team members, the gallery, and the scoring panelists, as well as the witnesses. First of all, I'll ask team members, please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation that you're about to give will be faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? And I'll get a verbal from everybody. Thank you. As to our witnesses, if I could have you please raise your right hands. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add any material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition?
I do.
Thank you. And I have affirmatives from all witnesses as well. Do we have any, I take it we have some members in the gallery? Okay. As to gallery members and teachers and coaches, Do you, please raise your right hand, do you promise to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? Thank you. Scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly, objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedure, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
I do.
Thank you both. All right. General issues as to sequestration. Teams may not request witness sequestration. Are there any preliminary matters for either side?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution requests that for the purposes of the virtual trial, attorneys be allowed to present evidence to the courtroom before it's been officially admitted into evidence so that witnesses can verify its legitimacy.
Thank you. Any objection to that?
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. We'll proceed with that understanding. Any others?
That's all from the prosecution.
Anything from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. We ask that, and pending any internet issues, time is paused until the issue is resolved.
Yes, I don't see a problem with that. And if we do come up with some technical issues, somebody shout out to me and we'll try to get some things arranged.
And we also ask that the stipulated facts be admitted into evidence and jury instructions constructively be read to the jurors.
Any objection from the prosecution?
No objection.
Okay. Are we ready to proceed with opening statements?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your
Okay.
Honor.
First, for the prosecution, your opening.
May I proceed?
Yes. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Timothy Phelan, and today I will be representing the state in the trial against Avery Becker. The murder of Mackenzie Brackman is an unforgivable crime. Brackman was a charitable man who gave a significant portion of his time to mock trial, an activity that he loved, and to helping students succeed in mock trial. He was revered by many as not only a good attorney, but a good coach for future attorneys, and he was loved by almost all of his students, except for Avery Becker. Becker and Brackman disagreed nearly constantly, and after numerous second chances, Brackman was placed in the unfortunate position of having to remove Becker from his mock trial team, a decision that would end up costing him his life. In the face of indisputable evidence, a defense must often hinge on fiction and theatrics. When the evidence clearly points out the truth, theatrics offer an easy route out for those most guilty. Ladies and gentlemen, today you will bear witness to many theatrics. You will bear witness to a disgraceful attempt to undermine irrefutable evidence, and you will bear witness to the murderer of a man who spent his entire life fighting to protect the integrity of the very courts that the defense will try to sabotage today. Today, the prosecution will call Detective Jordan Markowitz, a long-standing officer with the Denver Police Department with many years of experience as a detective and countless hours of training. His investigation of cell tower records will place Becker at the scene of the crime, and his thorough analysis of the crime scene will lay out the exact details of Mr. Brackman's tragic fate. The defense will call Blake Van Owen to the stand, a former officer no longer working in law enforcement after using excessive force during an arrest. He will assert that an investigation that he was not involved in was rushed and will ignore evidence in favor of wild speculation. The prosecution will call Alex Cifuentes, a student willing to testify to Avery Becker's obvious motive. The defense will call Taylor Perkins, a close friend of Avery Becker's who couldn't possibly present an unbiased account of the events on March 6th. Taylor, the only witness presenting an alibi for the defendant, will lay out a story that again has no evidence supporting it. The prosecution will call Kyle Kuzak, another expert in this case, who created the official investigative report and determined that Avery Becker was the killer. The defense will bring Avery Becker to the stand. Avery Becker, who had feuded with the victim for months, who had already vandalized Mr. Brackman's car, and who had ample motive to sabotage Brackman again, eventually killing him. Members of the jury, today you will witness a trial of facts versus fiction. You will see a case built on evidence and a case built on drama, and it will be up to you to decide if Mackenzie Brackman's killer will face justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon. Opening for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. May I begin?
Yes, thank you. Please state your name for me.
Ariana Elsa.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Framed evidence, faulty police work, and the fallacy that is this trial. Today, the prosecution will try to argue that Avery Becker murdered her mock trial coach because she did not like how her coach, Mr. Brackman, treated her. They will argue that Avery Becker, a high school student, killed a man because of an extracurricular activity. We will show you that this is a ridiculous notion. My name is Ariana Elsa, and my colleagues and I will demonstrate that Avery Becker could not and would not kill her mock trial coach. Avery Becker simply wanted to be a respected member of the mock trial team. She loves lawyering and has a natural affinity for it. She will share with you that the notion that she would kill Mr. Brackman is a fallacy. She will testify to her alibi that she was with friends at the time of Mr. Brackman's death. Most importantly, she will testify that her differences with Mr. Brackman within the trial did not bring her to murder him. Also, Taylor Perkins, a friend of Avery Becker, will testify to Avery's character. He will also testify that Avery was with him the entirety of the day that Mr. Brackman died. He will also testify about other possible suspects that had the means to alter evidence and the perspective of the police, like Alex Cifuentes, who provided unsubstantiated text messages, and Blair Rowlands, another suspect in this case. Taylor Perkins will also testify that Avery Becker was framed. Blake Van Owens will testify that the police work of Kyle Cusack and Detective Markowitz, two of the prosecution's witnesses, was unsatisfactory. They were rushed and missed many important facts of the case, such as details on the knife, specifics about the Ring doorbell, and many other pieces of evidence that the prosecution has built their case upon. The police work that the prosecution will present to you today via Kyle Cusack and Detective Markowitz was faulty. As mentioned, the prosecution will present to you 3 witnesses today, for 2 of them being Kyle Cusack and Detective Markowitz. As these witnesses testify, please consider their relative lack of education and training and how they jump to conclusions without following all the evidence. And as Alex Cifuentes, another witness of the prosecution, testifies, please consider their bias as they testify. If you have any reasonable doubt today that Avery Becker murdered her mock trial coach, you must find her not guilty. Today, the prosecution has the burden of proof, but we will show you that Avery Becker was framed. The police work was faulty, and this entire trial is a fallacy. Avery Becker did not kill her mock trial coach.
Thank you, counsel. Let's begin with the presentation of witnesses, but I will give just a second for our scoring panelists to get theirs recorded. And as we go along, if our scoring panelists need more time or need to interrupt, please give me a shout out. Okay, let's begin with the prosecution's case. Please call your first witness.
The prosecution calls Jordan Markowitz to the stand.
Thank you.
Good morning, Miss Detective Markowitz.
Detective Markowitz, I'll remind you, you're still under oath. And if I could have you state your full name for the record and spell your last.
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Jordan Markowitz. Markowitz spelled Markowitz.
Thank you. Go ahead, counsel.
What is your job, Detective Markowitz?
Well, I'm a homicide detective with the Denver Police Department.
And how long have you been working with the Denver Police Department?
That would be about 13 years now.
And how long have you been a detective?
7 years.
Have you received any special training as a detective?
Actually, yes. I have specialized training and experience with cell phone technology.
And have you received any certification relating to that?
I have a cell phone technology and forensic data recovery certification, both from the American Academy of Law Enforcement.
And what did you have to do to receive that certification?
Well, I had to complete a 3-day training course, and that trained me on types of cell phone data, how to use software like the Celebrite system to download information from a cell phone, and how to acquire and interpret cellular records.
And how often do you use this training?
Well, I have to use it constantly as a detective. I've downloaded the contents of hundreds of cell phones at this point in my career, and I've testified using cell tower data in over 50 cases.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to have Jordan Markowitz designated as an expert in the fields of cell phone technology, forensic data recovery, and homicide investigation pursuant to Rule 702.
Any objection or request to voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to conduct a voir dire.
Go ahead.
Detective Markowitz, there was evidence recently lost as a part of an investigation that you were the head detective of. Is that right?
Yes, the crime scene investigators that were taking photos on the scene unfortunately lost a few images.
And you were the head detective here?
I was the head detective, but I'm not in charge of all of the technical matters.
And you claim your specialties in cell phones, is that right?
Yes, that's true.
Yet your only training in cell phones was merely a 3-day course?
A 3-day course and a lifetime of experience, yes.
And despite your time at the Denver Police Department, you've never actually testified in court as an expert before, is that true?
That's true, but I have testified using that data.
Your Honor, I object to the admission of this witness as an expert on account of their lack of skill and experience, because despite their time at the Denver Police Department, they lack the knowledge and experience to properly investigate and discuss a case like the one today.
Mr. Fallon, any response?
Sorry. Yes, I believe Detective Markowitz's long years of experience with a detective counts as plenty of experience to be admitted as an expert today.
All right, over the objection, I'll allow the expert to proceed, as I do believe it'd be beneficial for the jury to hear and assist in determining the matter. So the witness is accepted. Go ahead with your direct exam.
Now, let's talk about the death of Mackenzie Brackman. What was your involvement in this case?
Well, I was assigned to the Brackman death on March 6th, 2020.
And what did you observe when you first arrived at the scene of the crime?
Well, the front door was open and the victim was face down on the floor in a pool of blood just inside the house. There was a large knife on the floor just past the victim's body.
Your Honor, may I present what has been previously marked as Exhibits 1 through 5?
Yes.
Can you see that?
Yes, this court can.
Thank you. Can you identify these documents, Detective?
Yes, I can. These are pictures of the scene of the crime.
And how do you know what these are?
Well, I was present when they were taken at the scene of the crime.
And are these a fair and accurate representation of the pictures taken?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to have Exhibits 1 through 5 admitted into evidence.
Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor, I object under Rule 403 as these are needlessly presenting cumulative evidence.
Any response to that?
Yes, I believe pictures of the crime scene are still necessary in order to fully review the legitimacy of this case.
All right, thank you. I'm going to allow the photographs. There is some potential prejudicial effect, but with the limit to the 5 photographs, the court will accept those and allow you to proceed forward.
Now, Detective Markowitz, could you describe the body?
Yes, so as you can see, the victim's shirt is soaked in blood around the upper left back and shoulder area. He had clearly been stabbed, and from the angle of the body, it looked like the victim had fallen to the ground while trying to escape the residence.
And what about the area around the body?
Well, there's cast-off blood spatter on the wall and ceiling near the door. There's also a large bloodied knife on the floor near the body.
And what did you notice about the rest of the crime scene?
So the rest of the house was in a slight disarray. The dining area, there was a chair overtouched and the back door was open.
And did you notice anything else outside of the house?
I noticed a Ring doorbell. That's visible in Exhibit 1. On the outside of the house, there was a Ring camera aimed at the gate to the backyard and another aimed at the back door.
And did you do any work with these Ring doorbell cameras?
I did. I was able to get access to all of the videos taken on March 6th.
Your Honor, may I present what has been previously marked as Exhibits 10 through 13?
Yes, go ahead.
Now, can you identify these documents, Detective?
I can. These are the videos taken from the Ring cameras the day of the crime.
And how do you know what these are?
I was the one that obtained the Ring camera videos.
And are these a fair and accurate representation of the videos you obtained?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, at this time I move to have Exhibits 10 through 13 admitted into evidence.
Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor, both to lack of foundation and relevance. The foundation has not been laid as to when these videos are from. Therefore, we cannot judge the evidence that they really provide.
I agree with the objection, and I'll ask that counsel lay some more foundation for the introduction of the Ring videos.
Yes, Your Honor. Detective, can you tell me what time these videos were taken? Or what date
Yes,
these
they were
videos were
taken
taken?
at the time of intrusion on March 6th, 2020, the same day as the murder.
Thank you. Now at this time I move to have Exhibits 10 through 13 admitted into evidence.
Any further objection?
Yes, Your Honor, I then object to lack of personal knowledge as the foundation has not been laid as to how this witness would know when these videos are from.
Thank you. The court's going to overrule the objection and allow the videos to proceed. The exhibits 10 through 13 are admitted.
And may these be published to the jury?
Yes, please.
Now, Detective, could you clarify what's happening in this first video?
Yes, so as you can see, this video shows a person wearing a hoodie and some type of mask. It appears they attempt to open the front door, but it also appears locked.
And could you clarify what's happening in the second video?
Yes, so this next video shows a person opening the gate at the side of the house, presumably the same person.
And what about the third video?
This one would show the same person entering through the unlocked back door.
And finally, could you describe what's happening in this video?
Yes, this final video shows the assailant running out the front door.
Now, after obtaining these videos, what steps did you take to continue your investigation?
Well, I downloaded the contents of the victim's phone and discovered a tremendous number of text messages and emails about something called mock trial. I discovered the victim was a mock trial coach at Colorado High School. So I reached out to the students on the mock trial team.
And what information did you receive from them?
Well, the first student I called, Alex Cifuentes, informed me that another student, Avery Becker, had texted
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Any response?
The witness is simply recounting events that occurred during his investigation and not specific statements made out of court.
I agree. As long as the client or the witness is testifying to things of his personal or her personal knowledge, you can go forward.
Would you like me to repeat that question, Detective?
Yes, please.
What steps did you take to continue your investigation after obtaining the videos?
Well, it had turned out that Brackman had kicked Becker off the team after Becker vandalized his car.
And did you attempt to contact Avery Becker?
I did. I attempted to arrange an interview with Becker.
And did that interview ever occur?
No, it didn't. Right before the scheduled time, I was informed by a lawyer hired by Becker's parents that they would not be going to the interview.
And how did you further your investigation into Becker?
Well, I attempted to search Becker's cell phone, but was told that Becker had lost it on March 5th, 2020, the day before the crime. I did receive a phone number for Becker's phone, though, and that allowed me to obtain account records and cell tower records for the phone.
And what information did you receive from those records?
Well, I received information about the date, time, and which cell tower was being used for every call and text message that was sent or received on the phone. Typically, a phone connects to the closest cell tower, so this allowed me to determine the general location of Becker at the time of each text or call.
Your Honor, may I present has been previously marked as Exhibits 15 and 16?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you identify these documents?
Yes, so Exhibit 15 is a map showing the cell towers in the area which Becker's phone connected to, and Exhibit 16 is my expert interpretation of the data I received.
And how do you know what these are?
Well, I worked with these cell phone records throughout the case, and Exhibit 16 specifically is my own interpretation.
Can you hear me? Sorry, you've frozen on my end.
I couldn't hear you.
Okay. All right. Are these a fair and accurate representation of the cell towers in this area?
Yes, they are.
At this time, I move to have Exhibits 15 and 16 admitted into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Those exhibits 15 and 16, I think, are admitted.
And may these be published to the jury?
Yes, go ahead.
Now, Detective, what does the cell tower information show you?
Yes, so if I can direct you to the map. Over the course of the afternoon, Becker received several calls and texts from another Colorado high school student, that being Taylor Perkins. Becker received a text at 12:47 p.m., which went through cell tower antenna 1227-3. This covers Becker's house. Becker received another text at 12:55, which went through cell tower 1191-1. That would be consistent with Becker driving on Rock Creek Parkway, also the most logical route from Becker's house to Brackman's. Becker then received 2 calls and 1 text at 1:05 p.m., 1:06 p.m., and 1:17 p.m. respectively. They all went through tower 1197-1. That's the antenna closest to Brackman's residence.
And was there anything unusual about those 2 calls?
Yes, the 2 calls were very short. That indicates they were left unanswered, but this is unsurprising as at the time of the calls, I believe Becker would have been breaking in to the Brackman residence.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Any response?
I believe this witness has been admitted as an expert in homicide investigation, and so he can speculate as to the events that were occurring at that time.
If I may respond, Your Honor.
Yes.
This conclusion falls outside of the witness's expertise as to what a certain person would be doing at a specific time.
Ms. Fralin, anything else?
I believe it's well within his expertise to be able to tell what a murder suspect was doing at the time of a murder.
And I do believe this to be his opinion and his opinion testimony, which he has been introduced as an expert, so I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Now, finally, Detective, what did all of this evidence lead you to conclude?
Well, based on my observation, it seems that Avery Becker went to Mackenzie Brackman's house on Friday, March 6, 2020, intending to break in and vandalize it after being kicked off the team. Now, Brackman was alerted to Becker's attempts to get in by the Ring doorbell camera and armed himself with a knife against the unknown intruder. Becker likely attempted to fight back against Brackman and ended up fatally stabbing him in the process. Although I doubt Becker set out to kill Brackman, but a murder during a burglary is still murder.
Thank you. No further
Objection,
questions.
Your Honor. This witness cannot draw legal conclusions.
I'll sustain that objection, and that'll be the end of the direct. Any cross-exam?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Detective. Let's discuss your investigation of this case. You initially had the impression that the victim's mock trial activity had nothing to do with his death. Is that right?
That's true. Until I received some additional information, it seemed unlikely.
And you, in fact, mentioned that the culprit could have been a disgruntled ex-client of Mackenzie Brackman's.
Yes, it's one of the leads we pursued.
You, in fact, began investigating Blair Rowlands, the son of a disgruntled ex-client who was sentenced to life in prison.
That's true.
You even deemed Blair an important witness, enough to include him on your prepared exhibits, Exhibit 15 and 16, as a part of this investigation.
That's true. We take all leads into consideration with our evidence.
And during your investigation, you also learned that Blair was absent the day of the murder with no alibi.
Yes, that's also true.
Yet, during your investigation, you could not locate Blair because he had fled the state.
Yes.
Thus, you stopped your investigation of him here because of this inconvenience.
No, we stopped the investigation on Blair Rowlands because we had better evidence pointing to other conclusions.
I'd like to now talk to you about some text messages you viewed. During your interview, Alex Cifuentes mentioned a text conversation they allegedly had with Avery Becker. Is that right?
Yes, that's true.
And is it correct that you accepted photos of these texts from Alex with no validation or certification?
Yes, they gave me screenshots of the text messages.
And you had software like the Celebrite system to verify it, yet you didn't use this?
That's correct. Had I deemed it necessary to verify it with the Celebrite system, I could have. I chose not to.
And there are several ways to forge this conversation. Is that right?
That's true.
All right, let's talk about the call detail records you obtained. Is it true that these CDRs cannot provide the specific location of a person's phone?
They only provide the general location, but given with multiple cell towers, we can narrow that down to a more specific path.
And there's actually no way to determine who's in possession of the phone when these CDRs are taken. Is that right?
No, but it is most logical that Avery Becker would be in possession of Avery Becker's phone.
However, Mrs. Becker's phone was lost on the day before the murder, right? And that's why you could not use it in your investigation?
According to Avery Becker, her phone was lost.
So the location of the phone could have shown Avery Becker or a thief or anyone in possession of Avery Becker's phone.
It could have, but again, it follows it's most likely it was in Avery Becker's possession.
He also pointed out that the calls made were each very short. Is that right?
Yes, that's true.
And these calls may have been made in an attempt to locate Becker's phone. Isn't that true?
Yes, that's equally possible as to Avery Becker breaking into the house.
Let's reference the videos that you viewed. In these videos, the suspect was wearing a hoodie, a mask, baggy sweatpants. Is that right?
Yes, that's true. It's very hard to identify a suspect from the videos.
Thus, you couldn't tell the race of the suspect?
No physical attributes about the suspect were able to be gleaned from the videos.
And there wasn't any DNA evidence at the crime scene, was there?
No, but that's not as uncommon as you'd think.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Briefly, go ahead.
Detective, in the course of your investigation, did you ever uncover any physical evidence that would cause you to believe that Blair Orleans might be the murderer?
No, we did not. As I said, we follow up on all leads, but all of the actual evidence pointed to Avery Becker as the killer.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. This witness may be excused. Let me give our scoring panels a quick second to catch up with their scoring, and then we'll have you call your next witness. Okay, Mr. Phelan, call your next witness. Or the prosecution call their next.
Prosecution.
Go
The
ahead.
prosecution now calls Alex Cifuentes to the stand.
Thank you. Ms. Fuentes, you are under oath. Could I have you state your full name for the record?
Yes, of course. My name is Alex DeFuentes, Safuentes.
Thank you. I'll remind you, you're still under oath. Go ahead, counsel.
Okay, let's start off by talking about you. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a senior at Colorado High School, and I was a mock trial team. I love being a part of this club because of the variety of things we do, like acting, luring, and all of that.
Now, let's talk about Avery. What was your relationship like with Avery Becker?
We were both in mock trial together. I feel like we were pretty good friends up into this whole situation. We pushed each other to do better, which I really think benefited our team.
Mock trial is a competitive event. How was your team?
We were all pretty good. We were called the A team for a reason. We usually competed in higher level tournaments like state. I'd say Avery and I were about the same skill wise, but they tended to be noticed more because they got bigger roles as they were more showy and on the fly. We all had fun though.
Let's talk about Avery's demotion. Can you describe the events that led up to Avery being demoted to the B team?
About a month before the regional tournament last year, Avery was really unprepared for practice more than usual, and Mr. Breckman got mad and he demoted Avery to Team B.
And how did you feel about Avery's demotion?
I thought it was justified. When someone continues to show up late and unprepared and never seems to care, it just makes sense to demote them. The A team is for people who want to get as far as they can in the competition, and if Avery wasn't going to try as hard as the rest of us, then I don't think they deserve to be there.
And now, Avery getting kicked off the team. Do you know what happened?
Yes, I was actually at the practice where that all went down. It seemed like Breckman got annoyed with Avery because Avery was prepared to get.
Objection. Speculation. The witness does not know how Mr. Brackman felt at the time.
Counsel, your response?
The witness is simply testifying to their own observations of the situation.
Ms. Elsie?
She said Mr. Brackman felt annoyed, and this is obviously going to his emotions. He can testify as to what she saw Mr. Brackman do, but not as to how he seemed to feel.
I'll sustain that objection. Go ahead and ask your next question.
Thank you. Can you please explain what happened after Avery and Brackman seemed to get annoyed with each other?
Objection. This question calls for the same speculation that was just objected to.
Any response?
I'm not asking about the actual annoyance. I'm asking about the events that followed from what the witness has previously testified to have observed.
Okay, and I'm going to allow that question. The objection's overruled. Go ahead.
May you ask that question again?
What happened after this, after Brackman and Avery seemed to get annoyed with each other?
Well, that's when Avery vandalized Mr. Brackman's car, writing on it with a Sharpie and ruined the paint job. Mr. Brackman.
Objection. This testimony is more prejudicial than probative.
Any response?
The witness is talking about events related to both the defendant and the victim of the murder.
I agree. The objection is overruled. Go ahead and answer that question. Or finish answering that question.
Okay. Mr. Brackman did the only reasonable thing he could and kicked Avery off of the team.
And what did you think of Mr. Brackman's decision?
I think it was completely justified. When someone vandalizes your property, are you supposed to take it like any outburst? He didn't even press charges. And even if they didn't think that Sharpie was a dry erase marker, the consequences still should have been the same. If you ask me, Mr. Brackman went easy on Avery. And it wasn't just this. It was just all the events leading up to this also.
Moving on, when did you next see Avery?
Avery had texted me a few times asking for help for getting back on the team, but a few days later, the Fresh Shack was the first time we actually talked in person after this. We had gotten out of practice and the team was headed over to get something to eat. I saw Avery and her friend Taylor there. I gave my condolences for not being on the team anymore. And we talked about mock trial stuff with them, but nothing too big.
No, I understand this might be hard, but can you please tell us about the day of Mr. Brackman's death?
Yes, that day he didn't show up to practice. We all decided to leave after 15 minutes because if our coach wasn't there, why should we be? And then when I found out that Mr. Brackman was dead, I realized why he wasn't at practice that day. I still feel terrible about that.
And afterwards, how did you contribute to the investigation?
Well, Avery sent me these really suspicious text messages the night before, so I wanted to show the detectives in charge of the case. I ended up forgetting my phone at home, though it was getting old, so the battery wasn't all that great. I had been charging it, and I accidentally left it at home.
So how did you show the detectives the text?
The detective let me send him screenshots of the text after I got home. I offered to come back, but he told me it was fine.
Objection,
Your
hearsay.
Honor,
Any response?
this is not going to the truth of the matter asserted.
May I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
The witness was testifying about specifically what a police officer said and the truth. And the truth in that statement.
Any further response?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness is not talking about the truth of the matter of the case, simply something that a detective had mentioned pertaining to evidence.
Thank you, counsel. I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Your Honor, may I please show opposing counsel and the witness what has been previously marked as Exhibit 14?
Yes.
Alex Cifuentes, can you see the text messages pulled up on screen?
Yes.
Okay. I have pulled up Exhibit 14. Can you please describe these?
Yes, these were the screenshots I sent to the detective depicting a conversation between Avery and I.
And are these true and accurate copies of the text messages?
Yes.
I would like to offer into evidence Exhibit 14. May I publish to the jury?
Any objection to Exhibit 14?
Yes, Your Honor, I object on grounds of best evidence according to Rule 1001. This is a copy or secondary evidence of writing that cannot be admitted into evidence.
Any response?
These are screenshots of the messages sent, and as the phone is no longer available, this is the best evidence available.
And I agree with that response and will overrule the objection. The exhibit, I'm sorry, what number did you say this was?
14.
Exhibit 14 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, what did you think of this conversation?
It made me feel really awkward and kind of suspicious of Avery. I had hoped Avery didn't mean it at the time, but this evidence that Avery planned to be at Coach's house, this is evidence that Avery planned to be on Coach's house on March 6th.
Now, did anything else pertaining to these messages occur?
Well, there was this private investigator for the defense who came to my house and attempted to interrogate me about them. If I thought that they were there for the truth, I would have happily complied. Getting to the truth is extremely important to me, but I knew from my time in mock trial that that wasn't their intent.
Now, how did you react to her attempt at an interrogation?
I think I responded how most people would. I admit, I got pretty frustrated, but when she started accusing me of faking the text messages for some evil purpose, I couldn't.
Objection. Hearsay, she's referring to conversations previously had outside of court.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. Once again, these are not going to the truth of the matter asserted.
What are they going to?
They're going to the conversation between unrelated parties, as the investigator is not even a witness in today's case.
I find that the objection is overruled. Go ahead.
May I re-ask the question?
Yeah.
Yes.
How did you react to her attempt at an interrogation?
Like I said before, I think I responded how most people would. I got a little frustrated, but when they started accusing me of faking the text messages for some evil purpose, I just couldn't take it anymore. My coach was dead, and I was being accused of framing someone who I considered a friend for his murder.
Lastly, what do you think of Avery Becker?
I respected Avery's skill, but I think Avery was lazy when it came to mock trial and often lashed it out when criticized. I think Avery constantly displayed their discontent for Mr. Brackman. It's a terrible thing to think about.
Objection, speculation. The witness does not know exactly how Avery felt.
You
Your Honor,
respond?
may I respond?
Yes.
The witness said, I think, therefore it is displaying their opinions and observations.
I agree. That's the witness's personal observations. The objection is overruled.
Should I just continue?
Now, yes,
Go ahead
please.
and ask your next question.
May I re-ask the question since it was
Yes.
interrupted? Thank you. What do you think of Avery Becker?
Like I said before, I respected Avery's skill, but I think Avery was kind of lazy when it came to mock trial and often lashed out when criticized. I think Avery constantly displayed their miscontempt for Mr. Brackman. It's a terrible, terrible thing to think about. And I wouldn't throw out accusations if I wasn't completely sure, but I am sure Avery did this.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go
May I
ahead.
begin? Okay. You think Mrs. Becker refused to work hard, correct?
Yes.
Is it true that Avery Becker had more success at mock trial competitions than you?
Yes.
Objection,
Did this-
relevance.
I'm sorry.
May I-
You can respond to the relevance objection.
Yes, so this goes to the bias between the witness and the defendant and therefore is relevant.
I do believe it's relevant. I'll overrule that objection. Go ahead.
Did it upset you that Avery Becker had more success at mock trial competitions than you?
Yes.
You accused her of having no real talent.
Yes.
Avery asked you to help her get back on the team again, correct?
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to make amends,
Yes.
yet you did not want her back on the team.
Not personally, no.
And you would get a larger role if she were left off the team?
Yes, but I feel like that's quite obvious.
You were excited that Avery was off the team because you would ultimately benefit.
I feel like the whole team benefited because it'd be all hard workers.
You alleged that Avery texted you about breaking into Mr. Brackman's house, correct?
Yes, Avery did text me.
Yet all you have are screenshots?
Yes, I offered to bring back in my phone, but I didn't need to.
The police never demanded to look at the actual texts on your phone?
No, but that's not my part of the investigation to talk about.
And it is convenient that you no longer have this phone, correct?
Like I said before, it broke and it was getting really old.
Objection. This question could be considered probative or prejudicial. Sorry.
Any response?
Yes, whether or not Alex Cifuentes still has the phone is extremely relevant as to the condition of the evidence.
I agree. I'm going to overrule that objection. Go ahead.
Yet you don't have the actual phone, correct?
No.
And you did see Avery at the Fry Shack a day prior to Mr. Brackman's death and the day that Avery's phone went missing?
Yes, ma'am.
And you did speak with Blair Rowlands, another suspect in this case, regularly saying hello and goodbye, correct?
Yes.
And you and Avery Becker are no longer friends, correct?
No, not at all.
No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Now, can you describe your relationship with Blair Rowlands?
Blair Rowlands was just a classmate, and I wouldn't know if I'd say friends, but we were acquaintances, just like one student from another.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Thank you. This witness may be excused. I'm going to give my scoring panelists just a minute to catch up before I'll have the prosecution call their next witness. Okay, let's have the prosecution call its next witness.
The prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
Thank you. Mr. Kuzak, please approach. I'll remind you, you're still under oath. And could I have you state your full name for the record?
Kyle Kuzak. Kuzak is spelled K-U-Z-A-K.
There you are. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, counsel. You may begin your direct.
Good morning, Mr. Kuzak. Let's begin with what qualifies your opinion on the matters of crime scene reconstruction. How long have you been involved in crime scene reconstruction?
I've been involved in crime scene reconstruction for 19 years now.
And do you hold any certifications or training in this realm?
Yes, I'm certified by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation as a crime scene reconstructive investigator.
And what's your current role?
I've spent the past 3 years as a civilian employee of the Denver Police Department.
Finally, what sorts of techniques do you use in your crime scene reconstruction investigations?
I utilize a 5-step process that includes recognition, documentation, collection, and evaluation of evidence.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to have Kyle Kuzak designated as an expert in the field of crime scene reconstruction pursuant to Rule 702.
Any objection or request of voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to perform a voir dire.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Kuzak, is it true that you are not a police officer?
That is true, yes.
And you are merely a civilian employee?
That is correct.
And you visited the scene after it was already processed by real police officers?
That is correct, yes.
And you weren't actually there during the actual processing of the crime scene?
Again, that is correct.
And you only have 3 years of experience working as a civilian employee for the Denver Police Department, correct?
As the employee, yes, but I've been involved in crime scene reconstruction for 19 years.
Thank you. Your Honor, the defense objects to the admission of Mr. Kuzak as an expert, as he lacks the proper knowledge of the scene and does not have the proper training or certifications to testify as an expert in this field.
Any response?
Absolutely. Mr. Kuzak holds all relevant training and experience in crime scene reconstruction and is clearly an expert in their field.
I'm going to overrule that objection and allow him to testify as an expert in crime scene reconstruction. Go ahead.
Investigator Kuzak, were you called to visit the scene of Brackman's murder?
Yes, I was.
And could you outline the ways in which you ensure a thorough investigation when reconstructing a crime such as this one?
Of course. I apply 2 key principles to every case I'm involved in. First of all, I assume that every case is going to trial. And second, I document all evidence. Together, I conduct a thorough investigation and organize all evidence with the mindset of further reconstruction.
And could you walk us through what, in your expert opinion, you believe to have occurred the evening of March 6th?
During the afternoon in question, an individual matching the height and build of the defendant was recorded by a series of cameras, first approaching the
Can we pause time really quick?
Yes, go ahead. It looks like we have a frozen camera.
Yep.
We'll see if we can get that witness back live.
Mr. Kuzak, can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Okay, could you say something really quick?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, let's try that again, counsel.
Yes.
Still can hear me?
Yes. Mr. Cusack, what do you believe the victim did before the intruder entered the home?
Well, the evidence suggests that upon being alerted to the intrusion by either a notification from the Ring doorbell system or by the opening of the back door, the victim armed himself with a chef's knife from a large block. A drawer containing several small knives was also found open.
And once the intruder was in the home, what do you believe to have occurred?
The evidence points towards a struggle between the victim and the intruder shortly after the intruder entered the home. Scuff marks on the kitchen floor near the back door indicate the two individuals engaged in close contact immediately inside of the back door. A broken plate, which was found just 5 feet from the back door, suggests that the struggle moved towards the kitchen table. It is at this point that I believe the intruder disarmed the victim and obtained the chef's knife.
And once the intruder had the chef's knife, where do you believe the stabbing to have occurred?
The crime scene photographs showed a series of small blood droplets that begin near the kitchen table and lead towards the front door, where a large pool of blood was found. The autopsy
We lost the sound of our witness.
Yes.
I'm going to ask that once she's able to
Nice.
repeat that answer.
Hmm?
Can our witness hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you repeat that answer, please? The video froze.
Oh, of course. The crime scene photographs showed a series of small blood droplets that began near the kitchen table and led towards the front door, where a large pool of blood was found. The autopsy report established that the victim was stabbed only once, but that the blade nicked the lower arch of the victim's aorta. This wound would have led to severe internal bleeding and bleeding out if the knife were to be removed. The crime scene photographs, along with the location and position of the knife in the victim's body, as described by the autopsy report, lead me to believe that the victim was stabbed in very close proximity to the intruder and whilst being restrained. The intruder reached over and stabbed the victim in the upper back and shoulder area.
And these crime scene photographs you mentioned that showed blood droplets were corrupted. How did you conduct this investigation with these corrupted files?
My investigation took place well before the corruption of the images, and I had no trouble accessing them for my analysis.
Okay, moving on from the reconstruction of the case to your expert opinion on the defense's case. Are you familiar with the defense's witness, Blake Van Owens?
I am.
Now, Van Owens claims in his report that the intruder stabbed the victim while the victim was sitting at the kitchen table. What do you say to these claims in your expert opinion?
First of all, either the Ring doorbell system or 2 security cameras around the victim's home would have notified the victim. Even if the victim didn't notice these warnings, the victim would certainly have noticed when the back door opened and someone began walking across the kitchen. Finally, if after all of that, the victim was still sitting down, the intruder would have had to hold the knife backwards from the way just about anybody would have hold it and stand almost directly above the victim before administering the fatal blow. Van Owens' claims do not account for the scuff marks near the door, the broken dish, or the empty slot in the knife block.
And what is your expert opinion on Blake Van Owens' crime scene reconstruction techniques?
Van Owens is a police officer, but has never had any crime scene reconstruction experience. I know him from some conferences. He only reviews the work of other crime scene reconstructions, mostly by reading reports. Reading a report will never provide an investigator the same amount of information as actually being at the scene.
And what is your final conclusion based on your extensive reconstruction?
The thoughtful reconstruction of this case reveals that the victim was surprised by the intruder, most likely Avery Becker, and engaged—
Objection, Your Honor. The witness is speculating as to who the murderer is. They admit in their own witness statement that that falls outside of their scope of expertise, merely the order of which the events may have occurred.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. This witness has been designated as an expert in the reconstruction of the crime. Part of that reconstruction involves taking that reconstruction and being able to apply it to this case.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes, go ahead.
It is true that Mr. Cusack has been admitted as a crime scene reconstruction expert. I do not doubt their ability to organize the events. However, they admit themselves that it is outside of their scope of their expertise to identify a witness in this case, or identify a murderer.
I'm understanding the testimony to assist the jury in its determination. So I believe that the statements that are being made are the opinion of this expert, and therefore I'm going to overrule that objection.
Okay, Mr. Kuzak, I'm going to ask that question again. What is your final conclusion based on your extensive reconstruction?
The reconstruction of this case reveals that the victim was surprised by the intruder and engaged in a significant struggle before being killed by the same knife that he had used to defend himself.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Desmond, cross-exam?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Cusack, it is true that you organized and accounted for evidence within your investigation that had potential fallibility.
That is correct.
And it is true that digital photographs of the scene have been corrupted.
Yes, but that corruption took place well after I had reviewed them.
So those photographs are not here for you to testify about today.
That is my understanding, yes.
So many of the files that you based your analysis off have mysteriously been corrupted.
Yes, that is through a technological failure. That is not my fault.
Thank you. And just to confirm, your in-depth analysis of this case was conducted after relationships documented in your report during the organization process where everything disappeared.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. And your conclusions found that the perpetrator matched the general height and build of the defendant?
That's correct, yes.
You found this by relatively associating the height of the intruder with a fence nearby?
Yes, as well as the angle of the stab wound in the body, as documented in the autopsy report.
And in the videos that you present to us, we can neither see the race nor gender of the intruder?
That is correct, yes.
The only data that allows you to even remotely tie Avery to this case is that there is a somewhat similar height comparison between the intruder and a fence?
That is correct.
And it is true that Blair Rollins also has a similar build and stature to that of Avery Becker.
That's also correct, yes.
So no DNA evidence was found at the scene either, correct?
That is correct, but that can be expected in cases like this.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to shift my focus to Blake Van Owens. You admit that many of Blake Van Owens's conclusions fall outside the area of your expertise, correct?
That is correct.
And it is true that Blair Rollins, it is true that Blake Van Owens is a real police officer.
That is correct, but I also have more experience in my areas.
Thank you. You were not able to recreate all the event segments at the scene.
That is correct.
You were not able to place all the evidence in support of your conclusions?
That is also correct, but that is to be expected in cases like this.
And you would prefer that there was much more physical evidence at the scene than there actually was?
That is always the case. You can never have too much evidence.
Yet, nonetheless, you jumped to a conclusion pretty early in your analysis, correct?
I follow the evidence to the most likely conclusion.
There was an absence of evidence where your initial conclusions suggested that there might be evidence.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation. This question is referring to facts of the case that have yet to be identified, facts of the investigation that have yet to be talked about.
A response?
Your Honor, I am asking a admitted expert witness whether or not the evidence fit with their conclusions. I don't believe that's outside of anything.
Thank you. I believe it's proper cross-examination. I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll ask this one more time for you. Mr. Cusack, there was an absence of evidence where the conclusions that you made in this case suggested that there might be evidence.
That is true, but the same is also true for Blake Van Owen's conclusions.
And though you disagree with Blake Van Owen's idea that the intruder snuck up, you admit that many of his conclusions might fall outside the area of your expertise.
Objection asked and
correct,
answered.
yes.
This exact question was asked mere moments ago.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
I did not ask this question yet. This is to do with Blake Van Owen's idea that the intruder snuck up. I was merely adding that part of their response onto my question.
Objection's overruled. Go ahead.
Mr. Cusack, would you like me to ask the question once more?
Yes.
Okay. Though you disagree with Blake Van Owen's idea that the intruder snuck up on the victim, you admit that many of his conclusions fall outside the area of your expertise.
That is correct, yes, but many of my conclusions fall outside of his area of expertise as well.
Thank you. And I would like to confirm that it is not your job here to identify who the murderer was.
That is correct, yes.
It is the detective's job to identify the murderer.
Again, that is correct.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Any redirect, counsel?
Briefly. One sec. Okay, Investigator Cusack, with the evidence provided, are you confident in your conclusion in this case?
I am.
And while many of Van Owen's claims fall outside your area of expertise, you do have the expertise in crime scene reconstruction that he lacks, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you feel qualified to testify to the reconstruction of this case in respect to Van Owen's claims?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anything further with this witness? All right, thank you. This witness may be excused. I'll allow some time for our scoring panelists to complete their scoring on this matter. Okay, any other witnesses for the prosecution?
No, Your Honor, the prosecution rests.
Thank you. We'll turn to the defense's case. I'll ask that the defense call your first witness.
The defense calls Avery Becker to the stand.
Mr. Becker or Ms. Becker, I'll remind you that you are under oath. And if I could have you, for the record, state your full name.
My name is Avery Becker, Becker being spelled B-E-C-K-E-R.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. Go ahead, counsel.
How do you know the deceased Mackenzie Brackman?
Mr. Brackman was my old high school mock trial coach.
And what was your relationship with Mr. Brackman like?
You know, I'll be the first to say that we did not have the best relationship. We always butted heads. I had a natural affinity for mock trial and didn't necessarily prepare as much as Mr. Brackman would have liked for me to. He didn't really like this aspect, so we did butt heads quite frequently.
And how did Mr. Brackman demonstrate his negative feelings towards you?
It was just like nitpicky things over whatever I did. He never really validated the good stuff that I did. It was always just negative comments. There was a couple larger incidences where things kind of blew up, one of which when I was demoted to the B team. Another time he kind of lost it when I deviated from a script, and then, of course, when I was eventually kicked off the team.
Was this upsetting to you?
Incredibly upsetting. I mean, all I ever wanted to do was be good at mock trial. I really loved it, and I think I had natural ability for it, and he just never really showed that he cared, and it kind of hurt.
Did you ever act on your negative feelings towards Mr. Brackman?
Regrettably, there was one time. It was right after the regional tournament. I had just won an award for getting the best closing argument and best attorney. Mr. Brackman walked into practice. I was expecting maybe a small congratulations from him. Instead, he just kind of blew up on me, started hurling negative comments at me. As anyone would, I of course got upset and walked out. I had previously been at the whiteboard, so I had what I thought was a black expo marker in my hand. I went out to the parking lot, I saw his car, and I wrote on it, but I do, of course, regret it so much.
Did you try to apologize?
Yes, afterwards, I felt absolutely horrible, and I tried to apologize to Brackman countless times. I went into his secretary to try to apologize in person. I sent him messages. I even offered to get a job to pay for the damage, but he just refused to talk to me.
How did that make you feel that he ignored your apologies?
Well, I was devastated. I mean, at the time, I just kind of tried to brush it off, but after I learned about his death, it was just so devastating, and I'm still a little haunted by the fact that I just never got a chance to reconcile things with him.
And overall, was it your goal to help or hurt the team?
My intention was never, ever to hurt the team. Anything that I did, my intention was always to help
relevance.
the team.
Any response to the relevance objection?
Yes, it has been stated that perhaps Avery Becker's motive may have been her disgruntled relationship with the mock trial team and its coach. So I wanted to clarify exactly the nature of that relationship.
Any response?
I don't believe it's been stated in this trial yet that there is a possibility that Avery Becker was acting against the will of the mock trial team. And based on that, I would classify this as irrelevant in this case.
Yeah,
May I respond?
Go ahead.
Alex Cifuentes had testified that Avery Becker did not work hard, so therefore I want to clarify exactly how Avery Becker felt about her work on the team.
Thank you. I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead and answer that question.
So,
Avery Becker.
My
sorry.
apologies. I'll just continue with my response. Anything that I ever did on the team was always to try to help the team out. I really loved mock trial. I loved everything about it. I liked most of the members on the team. So of course, everything I did was to try to help them.
What other relationships did you have with the mock trial team?
Well, I had a relationship with each of the members on the team, but I did join with my best friend, Taylor Perkins.
And what was your relationship with Taylor Perkins like?
Taylor and I were very close. He made mock trial incredibly fun for me. He was always there for me and was willing to do whatever for me, and I really appreciate that.
And where were you at the time of Mr. Brackman's death?
I was actually with Taylor Perkins. I had previously lost my phone the night before and I was worried about it, so we were out all day looking for it.
And are you familiar with Alex Cifuentes?
Yes, Alex Cifuentes is another member of the mock trial team.
And what is the nature of your relationship with Alex Cifuentes?
You know, I wouldn't say that it's the best. Alex was always a very hard worker, which I do recognize and I honor that, but Alex didn't necessarily agree with my tactics for going about things, and then it always kind of felt like, from my point of view, that Alex was kind of passive-aggressive towards what I would do, and it felt as though she was a little bit jealous of the fact that I could just wing stuff and still win more awards.
Alex Cifuentes insists you sent him messages that you plan to trash Mr. Brackman's house. Is this true?
No, I can't even believe that Alex would say that ever. First of all, I would never, ever send those type of messages, and I never did that. And second of all, if I were to send something like that, Alex would be the absolute last person that I would send that to.
Was Alex Cifuentes at the Fry Shack where you lost your phone?
Yes, the night before, Taylor and I were at the Fry Shack, and then I remember setting my phone down at a table, and I think Alex was one of the last people to be near it.
And are you familiar with Blair Rollins?
Yes, Blair Rollins went to school with us. I don't know a ton about Blair, but I do know that Blair and Alex were friends.
And did you know about the relationship between Blair Rollins and Mr. Brackman?
Yes, so I believe that Mr. Brackman was an attorney for Blair's father for some kind of trial, and then Mr. Brackman lost the trial and Blair's father ended up going to prison, so I know that Blair wasn't very happy about that.
Did you
Objection, speculation. The witness has no way of knowing how Blair responded to this court ruling.
Any response?
She's simply stating what she's observed of Blair Rollins, and it is quite easy to observe if somebody likes or dislikes a ruling. She didn't specifically say exactly the emotions of Blair Rollins.
Objection's overruled. Go ahead. And I believe she answered the question.
Yes, she did, so I'll keep moving. Did you want to ever harm Mr. Brackman?
Absolutely not. I mean, all the time people have bad relationships with their coaches or teachers or whatever, but just because we didn't necessarily like each other doesn't mean that I ever wanted to actually hurt him. It's ridiculous.
Did you harm Mr. Brackman?
Of course not. I mean, I will admit things got a little out of control a couple of times and our arguments got a little heated, but still, there's a fine line between having a bad relationship with someone and wanting to act on those negative feelings. I would never, ever do that, and I'm still upset that I didn't get to reconcile things with him, because ultimately he really was a good coach.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Any cross-exam?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Ms. Becker, by your own statement, you and Brackman didn't get along, correct?
Yeah, we really butted heads over a lot of stuff.
And Brackman said you were lazy and didn't put in the work?
Yeah, I mean...
Objection. This question calls for hearsay. It has hearsay within it.
Response?
It's a direct observation by the witness on their accounts of their relationship with Brackman.
Yeah, I don't believe it to be hearsay, so I'm going to go ahead and overrule that objection. Go ahead.
Okay. Ms. Becker, you stated that Brackman never gave you credit for anything you or Taylor Perkins did, correct?
Yeah, I felt as though I never got credit for anything. I mean, he didn't even congratulate me after I won the award for Best Attorney and Best Closing Argument, so yeah.
And you said that Brackman hated you, yes?
It certainly felt like that from my perspective.
And you and Brackman argued at almost every practice?
Yes, like I said, our personalities just really clashed, and then I felt as though I never got any validation from him, so we did argue pretty frequently.
So as this clash of personalities escalated, Brackman moved you down to the B team, correct?
Yes, there was one incident where I was moved down to the B team, and that did hurt a little bit, I'll admit it.
And you believe the B team is full of losers?
You know, I did say that. Ultimately, I was just upset because I had worked so hard to get up to the A team, and I felt as though I had a lot to prove on the team, so when I got demoted, it just kind of stung.
But you believe that the B team is full of losers, correct?
I did make that statement, but they are all very good people.
But you believe that the B team is full of losers, correct?
Yes, I believe I said that I did make that statement.
This question has been asked and answered.
Any response?
Your Honor, the witness is not answering this question, is attempting to dodge the question and frame her response in a past tense manner when she has stated in her witness statement that this is the case.
The objection is sustained. Go ahead.
Okay. Ms. Becker, Taylor Perkins is your best bud, correct?
Yes, Taylor Perkins and I are best friends.
And he gave up his senior season of mock trial so you could get back on the team, correct?
Yes, he did, but it was not my idea. It was actually Taylor's idea, and I'm really grateful that he was willing to do that because he knew exactly how much mock trial meant to me.
And after being put on the B team, you won the Best Attorney Award and Best Closures at Regionals, yes?
Yes, I did. I was very proud of myself. It was a proud moment for me.
And despite of this, instead of congratulating you as you expected, Brackman criticized you for going off script?
Yes, he did. I mean, like I said, I know that he liked when people stuck to the script and stuff, but that just wasn't how I rolled for most of the time.
And he said in front of everyone that you didn't deserve the Best Attorney Award. You rely on your good looks.
Objection. This question calls for hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, again, this is the witness's own personal experience in her relationship with Mr. Brackman.
May I respond?
Go ahead.
The attorney said Mr. Brackman said, i.e. that is hearsay, quoting exactly what is believed that Mr. Brackman said.
Any response?
Your Honor, this goes to the nature of their relationship, and I can continue on this line of questioning on the event that I'm describing, but I believe this is required to lay foundation for that event.
And I don't believe it's hearsay. I'll go ahead and overrule that objection, allow you to go forward.
Okay, I'll re-ask my question. Ms. Becker, he said, or Mr. Brackman said in front of everyone that you didn't deserve the best attorney reward and you rely on your good looks, correct?
Yes, he did say that, and honestly, it was a little bit humiliating. I mean, what kind of coach yells that at his student in front of all of her peers?
And this made you very angry, correct?
It did. I mean, I think that it would make anyone angry if you get insulted in front of your entire team.
And amid this anger, you called him the worst coach in the state.
I mean, after the kind of stuff that he said to me, I didn't think that was a very far out comment, but I do think that I got a little bit heated and things got a little bit carried away.
But you did call him the worst coach in the state, correct?
I did call him that, yes, but I do regret some of the words I said.
Okay, following this encounter, you wrote Worst Attorney Award in giant letters on the hood of Brackman's Porsche in permanent marker, correct?
I did, but like I said earlier, I thought that it was an Expo marker, otherwise I never would have done that, and I also offered to pay for all of the damage and tried countless times to apologize.
And after catching you writing Worst Attorney Award in black letters on the hood of his car, Brackman kicked you off the team, right?
Yes, he did, and I do, of course, understand where he was coming from with that. I mean, I think anyone would do that.
And despite understanding where he was coming from, you vowed you would get back at him if it was the last thing you did, correct?
While I did say that, I never had any ill intention with that. If anything, I just wanted to prove that I was a good mock trial student, and I wanted to show him that I was an asset to the team, essentially.
Okay. And you never apologized to Brackman in person?
I definitely tried to, though. I made countless attempts and he just refused to see me. So the fact that I wasn't able to apologize in person was not my doing.
Okay, but you did not apologize to him in person, correct?
No, I didn't get a chance to, and I'm honestly devastated by that.
Okay, now on the date of the murder, you were not at school, correct?
No, I was out with Taylor and we were looking for my phone all day as I had lost it the night before.
And your best friend, Taylor Perkins, is the only person who can testify to where you were on the day of the murder?
Yeah, I mean, I was with Taylor all day, though, and Taylor had his phone, so I don't know if there's anything that can be done about that.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Elsie, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Avery Becker, do you believe that there's a difference between wanting to murder someone and a disagreement about some mock trial events?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that anyone can say that they've been in heated disagreements before and things have gotten a little bit blown out of proportion. That doesn't mean that I ever wanted to murder Mr. Brackman. I mean, we had a bad relationship, but he was still my coach and I respected that.
And in regards to the vandalizing of the car, how do you feel about that today?
I was absolutely devastated by that. I felt terrible, and the fact that I was never able to reconcile things over that still haunts me.
And did you want to kill Mr. Brackman?
No, absolutely not. That's not who I am as a person, first of all, and I don't know why anyone would ever claim that I would do something like that.
No further questions.
Thank you. Anything else, counsel?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll give our scoring panelists just a minute to record their marks on that one. Okay, let's have the defense call their next witness.
Your Honor, the defense now calls Taylor Perkins to the stand.
Thank you. Taylor Perkins, please, I'll advise you, you're still under oath, and if I could have you state your full name for the record, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Taylor Perkins, Perkins being spelled Perkins.
Thank you. Go ahead, counsel.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins, what is your relationship to Mrs. Avery Becker?
The two of us were pretty good friends. I would say even best friends. We've known each other for a good amount of time, and Avery's one of the only reasons I was on mock trial to begin with.
Thank you. And could you please describe your experience with Avery throughout mock trial?
Yeah, Avery was always a natural on mock trial. She's able to come up with things on the fly, which I thought was pretty cool. She had awards to even back her skills, which was cool.
And based on your experience on the mock trial team, what did you observe about the relationship between Coach Brackman and Avery Becker?
Coach Brackman and Avery, they'd always have some disputes. Avery's style of mock trial didn't really float the Brackman boat, but so they had some disagreements over that. I always thought they were pretty funny. So it was pretty cool to see those. It would always give me a little chuckle.
And did Avery Becker ever do anything about this little feud?
Yeah, one time after a tournament, Avery came unprepared. Brackman got mad at Avery and demoted her to the B team afterwards.
Speculation.
Any response?
Your Honor, I don't believe that my witness is speculating, as he observed many of these events happen.
I agree. The objection's overruled. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins, would you like me to ask that question once more?
I think I can just restate what I said. After a tournament, Brackman got mad at Avery for coming up with things on the fly and demoted her down to the B team.
So when Avery was demoted to the B team, did you do anything?
Yeah, I wanted to be a good friend and not really having an extreme interest in mock trial. Like, I don't even want to be a lawyer in the first place. I decided to be a good friend and step down so Avery could enjoy one of her passions and enjoy her senior year of it.
From what you saw as a member of the mock trial team, did Avery and Coach Brackman ever have any more heated exchanges?
Yeah, after this tournament, Brackman didn't really see Avery as a good attorney, so they had a heated debate after that, and it ended with a prank by Avery that went wrong.
Objection. This answer was unfair extrapolation, or no, sorry, speculation, because at this point, Taylor Perkins would not have been personally witnessing any of this.
A response?
Your Honor, as a member of the mock trial team, my witness does know about this event happening, and additionally, as a best friend of Avery Becker, he is also aware of this event's occurrence.
I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead. I believe you did answer the question.
Okay. Mr. Perkins, what happened with this prank?
Avery just wanted to blow off some steam and pull a little prank on Brackman. She drew on his car thinking it was an expo marker and it was a permanent marker. Simple incident.
Objection, speculation. The witness is testifying to what they believe that the other, or Avery, is thinking, not what they're thinking.
Your response?
Your Honor, Avery Becker has testified that she believes that it was an expo marker today.
I'm going to sustain that objection. I think it's an appropriate objection. Move on to your next question.
Okay. Mr. Perkins, what did Coach Brackman do after Avery vandalized his car?
Avery was kicked off the team. I thought it was pretty unfair. She tried to do everything she could to get back onto the team. I even helped her with it.
Did Avery end up getting back on the team?
No, she was unable to find luck in that field.
And so what did you and Avery do after failing to get Avery back on the team?
We decided to head to the Fry Shack, just get some food, hang out, and yeah, that was a mistake. We ran into the mock trial team there, which didn't really help with Avery's case and her emotions.
So tell me a little bit more.
Objection,
Could you tell
lack of personal knowledge.
Overruled. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins, when you were at the Fry Shack, what happened there?
Most of the team seemed to be pretty to give their condolences to Avery. However, Alex Fuentes was being passive aggressive towards Avery, which made Avery a little mad. So she went to the bathroom.
Thank you. And when Avery went to the bathroom, do you know whether or not Avery had her phone?
Avery could have left her phone at the table. She was pretty angry, so she could have easily forgotten it.
Objection, speculation.
I think he's testifying to his personal knowledge as to what he understood, so I'll overrule that objection.
Mr. Perkins, would you like to finish your response?
Sure. She went off to the bathroom, seemed to be a little angry, so it could have been very fair that she just left her phone at the table.
So what did you and Avery end up doing the next day?
The next day, we realized Avery's phone was missing, so wanting to get our phone back, we decided to backtrack our steps from the previous day. We went to the mall after that to go check for the phone because we went to the mall after the Fry Shack, and then couldn't find it there. So we decided to go back to the Fry Shack, just see if any of the employees from the previous night had found the phone or seen the phone.
And so were you with Avery the whole day?
Yeah, the two of us were with each other the entire day, from the morning when she picked me up to when we ran into the mock trial team again at the Fry Shack.
So why weren't you and Avery at school that day?
We had really no prior commitments. We had a quiz earlier in the week, which after taking that, we didn't really have a big commitment to be at school. I mean, we're seniors after all, or we were seniors. So we decided we could take the day just to go look for the phone because we wanted to get it back to her as soon as we could.
Did you and Avery have any luck finding the phone?
No, we came up with no avail.
And what did the two of you do after searching for the phone at the mall?
We went to the Fry Shack just again to see if it was there. We ran into the mock trial team, which we thought was pretty weird. They should have been at practice, but they were saying that Brackman hadn't showed up.
So what did you learn while you were at the Fry Shack?
We learned that he was missing and no one had seen him. We later came to find out that he was killed, which was weird to think about, that while we were in the Fry Shack, he was dead on the ground.
Thank you. So now I'm going to ask you about another potential witness that went to your school in this case. Based on your experience at CHS, who is Blair Rollins?
Blair Rollins was another student who attended CHS. Always seemed like a weird dude to me. Just kind of weird.
And as a member of the mock trial team and a student at CHS, what was his relationship to Coach Brackman?
Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
As Mr. Perkins is a fellow student of Blair Rollins and a member of the mock trial team, he was familiar with Coach Brackman. He would know about the relationships and the interactions between the two of them.
Counsel? Anything further?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Perkins would not have any personal knowledge of the proceedings between Blair and Coach Brackman.
I'm going to overrule that objection. I believe there has been appropriate foundation laid for the asking of this question. Go ahead.
Mr. Perkins, what was Blair Rollins's relationship to Coach Brackman?
Brackman was an attorney for Roland's father. The case was lost and Roland's father was sent to jail.
And what did you observe about Blair Rollins following this case?
He seemed a little bit weird towards Brackman, I guess. I don't know.
So, based on what you've seen of him at school, what is Blair like as a person?
Pretty weird. Seems like if you ask multiple people, they'd say
Objection, improper character evidence.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. We're not trying to use the fact that Blair Rollins was a strange kid to prove that he was guilty. After all, we're here to discuss Avery today.
I'm going to overrule that objection. You can go forward.
Mr. Perkins, would you like me to ask that question again?
Sure.
Okay. Based on what you've seen of Blair at school, what was he like?
Pretty weird. It seemed like he could possibly be a psychopath. Maybe, I don't know. If you ask 50 kids, they would probably say the same.
And from your experience with them at school, were Blair and Alex Cifuentes friends?
They seemed pretty close. I mean, as the saying goes, opposites attract, and I guess they were opposites.
And while you were at the Fry Shack, at any point, is it possible that Alex had access to Avery Becker's phone?
Yeah, Avery was at the table with the both of us, and then when Avery left to go to the bathroom, Alex could have grabbed the phone then.
Is it possible, based on what you know, that Blair could have been in possession of Avery's phone?
With the two of them being friends or the such, it very possibly could have been handed off.
And considering the day of the murder, is it possible that Avery could have killed Coach Brackman?
No, not in a million years.
Objection. This witness is not an expert and therefore has no expertise in whether or not this could have happened.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
My witness was with Avery Becker for the entirety of the day of which Coach Brackman was murdered. I think he would know whether or not it was possible for Avery to murder someone if Avery was in fact with him for the entire day.
I agree. This goes to his personal knowledge. I'll overrule the objection. You can answer that question.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins, I'll re-ask this question. Is it possible that Avery could have killed Coach Brackman?
No, not in a million years. We were with each other the entire day, and unless Avery has some weird superpower that I know of, which there appears to be none, then yeah, no, it's not possible at all.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Cross-exam?
Yes, Your Honor. May I begin?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Perkins. I'm going to ask you a few questions. To start off, your relationship with Avery Becker. You were best friends with Avery Becker, correct?
Yeah, I would say we're best friends.
And you didn't have a very high opinion of Mr. Brackman, did you?
No, I saw him as like a mediocre coach. You know, as the saying goes, those who can't, or those who can do, but those who can't coach. So, I mean, I never really saw him as a great coach either.
And your opinions about Avery often differed from Mr. Brackman's?
Yeah, I thought Avery was a great mock trial member. She was able to come up with things on the fly. I thought it was pretty cool.
And you say that Avery and Brackman had a rocky relationship, correct?
Yeah, they would often have feuds. I mean, their ideals kind of went against each other. Avery was more of the come up with things on the fly member, and then Brackman typically liked it being more set in stone, having like practice, I guess.
So Avery was often rash, yes?
Avery could have had an ego and be rash, but never irrational enough to commit a murder.
And Avery has acted out verbally before.
Yeah, in their feuds, I guess.
And Avery regularly showed up to practice unprepared.
Yeah, that's just how Avery went about mock trial. I mean, it was normal for her.
And this lack of preparation was why Avery got demoted in the first place?
Yeah, Brackman just didn't like her style. And I mean, she won awards for it, so I don't see why he was so mad about it.
Now, to clarify, this lack of preparation was why Avery got demoted in the first place.
Yeah, which I don't understand why. I guess Brackman just didn't like the style.
And Avery was demoted to the B team before being kicked out of the club completely.
Yeah, that was before.
And you disagreed with this demotion, isn't that right?
Yeah, Avery was one of the best members on the team. I mean, demoting her, that just seems like Brackman's throwing away his chance to go to state.
So you quit mock trial so that Avery could get back on the A team, not just back on the team.
Yeah, I never had an interest of being a lawyer or even really cared about mock trial. And I knew it meant way more to Avery than it did to me. So I just wanted to be a good friend and give her my role.
But you two still would have been on the team together, just not on the same side.
I mean, yeah, but I guess I didn't really like mock trial. And if I could have given her the spot, then so be it.
And you quitting was why you weren't at the practice that caused Avery to vandalize Mr. Brackman's car.
Yeah, I wasn't there.
Meaning you only heard about these events through Avery.
Yeah, and I guess hearing about it, it sounded pretty rough on Avery.
And you claim that Avery just needed to blow off steam with this extreme outburst?
Well, it seems like it was just trying to be an expo marker prank, not like harmless completely. So I understand why that'd be blowing off steam. I mean, she liked to pull pranks like this, so there's nothing out of the norm.
But this was still physical action to blow off steam?
Yeah, it just meant to be a harmless prank, though. I mean, an expo marker and a Sharpie, I mean, they're easy to confuse, but one you can erase, which was the one she was trying to use.
Moving on. You weren't a big fan of Alex Cifuentes, were you?
Not really. I mean, they always seemed very passive aggressive, which didn't really seem genuine or anything.
And you stated that you wanted to punch Alex in the face when they sympathized with Avery.
I'm not a violent person. I mean, people can have those thoughts, but acting on them and having the thoughts, those are completely different.
But you did say this.
I thought it, but I never acted on it.
So you didn't like Alex, even when they were going out of their way to be nice?
It didn't seem very genuine at all. As again, she's very passive aggressive. I mean, she was just maintaining that main passive aggressive vibe towards Avery, which it didn't seem genuine at all.
Now about the phone. You weren't positive whether or not Avery grabbed their phone again after storming off to the bathroom?
I'm not sure, but since Avery was in a complete and emotional distress, I mean, she was angry and going very angry from Alex. When she went to the bathroom, she very easily could have just left the phone on the table, not thinking about it.
But you weren't sure whether or not they grabbed it.
Objection. This question has been asked and answered.
Any response?
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
The witness has not answered the question provided.
Yeah, I'm going to allow her to ask that again. Overruled.
Now, you weren't sure whether or not Avery grabbed it.
The possibility still remains. I mean,
now, both Avery and yourself ditched school the day of Brackman's murder to look for it.
Yeah, when she picks me up in the morning, we realized she didn't have it. So we decided to go look for it. And as I said earlier, we had really no prior commitments to be at school, and we were seniors, so taking a day off didn't really seem like it would be too effectful to our studies.
So you have no real alibi other than each other, correct?
Well, we ran into the mock trial members at the Fry Shack afterwards.
But this was after the murder.
Apparently, yeah.
Now, you say you found out about Brackman's murder along with everyone else?
Yeah, like after that, we were wondering why the mock trial team was there, and then later we found out that Brackman had been murdered.
And you talked about it with Avery and had no idea what to think about it?
Yeah, we were confused. I mean, we were members of the mock trial team. We were just interested in what happened. Like, we were completely in the dark.
At the time, you guys had no theories.
Not really. I mean, it was fresh on the block. We weren't really sure what happened.
You talked to Avery again after Avery's lawyer called you about being a witness, yes?
Yeah, we were just talking about the case.
And only after talking to Avery again, you thought Blair Rowlands could have been involved?
I mean, I never would have thought it initially. I mean, I'm not a detective after all. I'm just a student who goes to Boulder. But it makes sense after looking at it.
And you only came to this conclusion after finding out that Rowlands was absent from school that day?
I believe I found out later on that he was absent from school. I don't think Avery ever told me that.
But you didn't mention your source for this information, that Blair was absent.
It was a while ago. I can't remember who told me. It could have been another student for all I know. I mean, it wouldn't make sense if Avery knew either. If on the day of, she was with me the entire day.
So you don't know that Blair Rowlands doesn't have an alibi?
I mean, I don't know if he does. I mean, he's clearly not here today, so.
Meaning it's a possibility that Mr. Rowlands was accounted for despite not being at school.
Objection. This question calls on my witness to speculate.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm asking for the opinion on a possibility, not for actual evidence.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
My witness is not an expert in whether or not Blair had anything. He didn't research as to Blair's whereabouts prior to this case. He wouldn't know any of that.
I'm going to sustain that objection. Your next question.
Okay. Even though both you and Avery were not at school that day, you think that Blair Rollins is suspicious because he was not in attendance?
Yeah, and with him and Coach Brackman's prior history, it would make a lot of sense.
And this is considering the fact that Avery and Brackman didn't have a prior history?
I feel like having a dispute over an extracurricular activity and losing a case to someone's father, those are completely different circumstances. One would, like most understandably, lead to rage against someone. The other one is a simple thing that someone showed sincerity towards and trying to apologize for. That doesn't really make sense at all.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Perkins, did Avery ever harm Coach Brackman at practice?
No, Avery never harmed Coach Brackman. She's pulled little pranks that would never harm him.
And did you hear about the car incident from other people on the team other than Avery?
Yeah, I heard about the incident.
Objection. Lack of this witness does not provide this information in their witness statement.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yeah.
In his witness statement, he does not clarify that he hears it directly from Avery. He merely states that he hears it. And as a member of the mock trial team, it is very likely that he heard it from there. Additionally, he knows where he heard that event from.
Okay, and I agree. I'll rule that objection.
Mr. Perkins, would you like me to ask that question once more?
Sure.
Did you hear about the incident with the car from other people on the mock trial team other than Avery?
Yeah, I heard about the incident.
And did you ever physically harm Alex Cifuentes?
No, I'm not a violent dude. It popped in the mind, but did I act on it? No.
Would you ever actually harm Alex Cifuentes?
No, not in a million years.
And do you have any idea whether or not the murder happened before you went to Fry Shack?
I have no idea. I don't know when the murder took place.
Objection. As the witness has been seated in the courtroom, they would have knowledge of when this happened.
May I respond?
Yes.
I can either restate my question. I believe I asked, did you have any idea whether or not the murder happened before you went to Fry Shack?
I think it's an appropriate question. I'll overrule that objection.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins, would you like me to rephrase that or restate that question or?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have any idea whether or not the murder happened before you went to Fry Shack?
No, at the time I did not.
And do you have any knowledge whether or not Blair Rollins has an alibi?
I have no clue if he does or not. I mean, he's not here today, so.
And were you with Avery the entire day?
Yes, throughout the entire day, I was with Avery.
And were you anywhere near Coach Brackman's house?
No, at any point did we know where to go. Sorry, we never went near Brackman's house throughout the day.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. This witness may be excused. Defense, call your next witness.
The defense calls Mr. Blake Van Owen to the stand.
Thank you, Mr. Van Owen. I'll remind you, you're still under oath. If I could have you please state your full name for the record.
My name is Blake Van Owen, Owen being spelled O-W-E-N.
Go ahead, counsel.
Mr. Van Owen, what is your profession?
I work as a private investigator, professor, and expert witness in police practices, but please do call me Professor Van Owen.
And do you have any experience working in law enforcement?
I do. I formerly worked with the Aurora Police Department.
Why did you leave the force?
I became a bit disillusioned with police work when I saw the flaws in its tactics and techniques.
Where do you work now?
I now work in private investigation.
And what education do you have in this field?
Well, besides my training at the APD, I also obtained a master's degree in criminal justice.
Can you explain your position as an educator?
For the last 5 years, I've taught a course at CU Denver on police practices and social justice.
And you said you work as an expert witness. Can you explain that a little further?
Yeah, I regularly serve as an expert witness in a variety of things, such as police practices, false arrests, crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and a multitude of other fields, which are all pertinent to today's case.
How many cases have you been consulted for?
Well over 100.
Your Honor, the defense moves to have Professor Blake Van Owen designated as an expert witness in the fields of general police investigation tactics, false arrest, cell tower analysis, and crime scene reconstruction pursuant to Rule 702.
Any objection or request of voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to conduct a brief voir dire.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, Mr. Van Owen, you have not worked in law enforcement in several years, correct?
No, it's been a little bit of time that I've spent now as a private investigator.
And in that time, you've not received any formal education relating to cell tower analysis?
I've conducted many cell tower analysis cases. I've actually consulted on 5 cases as well. Formal education, though, I mean, I've obviously had that in order to do the work that I do.
But you also have not received any formal education specifically in crime scene reconstruction?
No, I believe all those fields fall within my master's degree in criminal justice.
And you haven't received any official certification relating specifically to cell tower analysis either?
No, again, that falls under my criminal justice degree.
Your Honor, the prosecution objects to this witness being admitted as an expert in cell tower analysis and crime scene reconstruction due to a lack of education.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. Pursuant to Rule 702, an expert can be admitted as pursuant to knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education. And this witness has sufficient knowledge, experience, training, and skill.
Thank you. The objection is overruled and the witness will be allowed to testify as an expert.
Professor Van Owen, let's discuss your involvement in this case. How did you first become involved?
I was first hired by the counsel representing Avery Becker in today's case.
And what is your opinion on the police investigation of this case?
Based on my training and experience, it's pretty clear that the police investigation was rushed. The police came to an easy conclusion.
What parts of the investigation did you view?
I reviewed the police reports, Kyle Kuzak's crime scene reconstruction, as well as the cell tower reports and evidence that were prepared by Detective Markowitz for today's case. The two of them neglected a lot of important information.
What do you think was the root cause of this flawed police investigation?
One of the biggest problems that I found was the number of assumptions that led Mr. Kuzak and Detective Markowitz to their conclusions. The investigation was full of confirmation bias.
What is confirmation bias?
You see, confirmation bias is an interpretation of new evidence as a confirmation of one's pre-existing beliefs. It was heavily prevalent in Detective Markowitz's investigation.
Let's discuss the crime itself. Why does the detective believe the victim had armed himself?
Detective Markowitz assumed that Mackenzie Brackman had his phone near him, saw the notification from his Ring doorbell of someone at the front door, and then grabbed a knife because there was someone there. Markowitz assumed that Mackenzie Brackman armed himself to defend against a milkman or a mailman.
Does this seem like the logical explanation to you?
Not at all. As someone with a Ring doorbell camera myself, I don't necessarily arm myself every time my notification goes off.
What does that mean in the context of this investigation?
Well, it seems that the intruder had set out to kill Mr. Brackman, and Mr. Brackman had not interrupted a random burglary as the prosecution suggests. This directly conflicts with Detective Markowitz's theory.
Let's talk some more about the cell tower records involved in this case. What can be confirmed from these records?
Well, at the very most, the cell tower records prove that Avery Becker's phone connected to various cell towers throughout the afternoon.
Is that it?
Yes. However, that is far from saying that Avery Becker was actually near Mackenzie Brackman's home.
Can you explain that a little further?
Well, you see, there's evidence that Avery Becker, as I'm sure you've heard today, lost her phone the day before the murder on March 5th of 2020. And Taylor Perkins confirms that the two were at both the mall, a public place, and the Fry Shack during the time the break-in occurred.
Your Honor, permission to screen share Exhibit 15,
Yes,
which has already been admitted.
Yes, go ahead.
Do you have any issues with conclusions reached by the prosecution regarding cell tower data?
I do. I believe the prosecution made some pretty far-fetched claims when it came to tracing the phone of Avery Becker. You see, these phone records don't work like GPS, and they don't tell us exactly where Avery Becker's phone was, only that it was within 6 or 7 miles of the 3 cell towers you see on your screen.
And to help the jury better understand these distances, how far away is the Fry Shack from these 3 towers?
Well, if you look under cell tower 1191-1, you see a label of the Fry Shack, which is where the Fry Shack is located. In reality, the Fry Shack is only about 2 miles away from the 2 furthest towers in the bottom left and top left of your screen.
And looking at the top of this map, can you explain the significance of Avery Becker and Blair Rowlands' homes' proximity to one another?
Sure. Detective Markowitz's only attempt at tying Avery Becker to actually going to the Brackman home was claiming there was a path from Becker's house down to Brackman's house that followed these 3 towers. If that was the case, you can see Blair Rollins' home to the left of Avery Becker's home, which would indicate that they would have followed the exact same path to Mackenzie Brackman's house.
You mentioned earlier that this investigation had several faults. What else was overlooked?
Well, for starters, I'm stunned that the police simply chose to accept the screenshots from Alex Fuentes' phone. Those messages could have easily been doctored. The police had the necessary tools, such as Celebrite, to verify those text messages, as well as the time to do so, but chose to accept them at face value. If you have some kind of technology like a Celebrite system to verify text messages like that, and you don't use them in a murder investigation, I'm not sure when you would.
Are there any other suspects that should have been considered?
Certainly. A few months before Mackenzie Brackman's murder, he represented a man named Jonathan Rollins. Rollins was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, with his child, Blair Rollins, present at the sentencing.
And what does that mean in this case today?
It's pretty clear that Blair Rollins had more of a motive in this case than Miss Avery Becker did, but the prosecution chose to not complete a full investigation of Blair.
Where did Blair go to school?
Blair Rollins, too, was a senior at Colorado High School last year.
And where is Blair now?
Blair Rollins essentially disappeared following graduation of last year, and the police never investigated his whereabouts or where he may have gone.
What evidence is there supporting an investigation into Blair Rowlands rather than Avery Becker?
Blair Rollins and Avery Becker have a very similar size and shape, which could account for the size in the ring videos found at the house of Mackenzie Brackman. There was only a video of an unidentified intruder, which means it very easily could have been Blair Rollins as well. On the day of the murder, March 6th, Blair was absent from school with no alibi, while Avery Becker had an alibi, being with Taylor Perkins. Blair's disappearance following graduation would also be a much more appropriate response to having committed a murder than that of Avery Becker.
How do you believe this case was handled?
It was rushed. It's clear that Detective Markowitz made up his mind and then sought evidence to support his conclusion. There's no physical evidence even placing Ms. Becker at the scene of the crime, and this case shouldn't have even been brought to trial.
Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
Any cross-exam?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Professor Van Owen, it's fair to say that you have a long history with law enforcement and police work, correct?
I would certainly say so.
In fact, you used to be a member of the Aurora Police Department?
Yes, I was.
And is it true that you left the department after injuring somebody during an arrest?
Yes, it was following a use of force case in which it occurred during the arrest of a woman.
Objection, Your Honor. This content should not be discussed in this case today.
So that's a relevance objection?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any response? What is
Yes,
the relevance?
I believe this goes to the bias of the witness in testifying today.
And I'll allow that for cross-examination purposes. Overrule that objection. Go ahead.
Now, since that incident where you injured somebody during an arrest, you've become disillusioned with police work?
Yeah, I became disillusioned with its tactics and techniques, which actually drove me away from the police force.
And you've stated that you disagree with many police department policies at a visceral level?
I do.
And you've testified quite a few times in court, correct?
Yes.
And every time you've testified on the side of the defense?
I have, yes.
And you've even said that you consider yourself a check of power on the police?
Yes, just the same way legislation can be a check on the power of the president.
So one could say you seem somewhat predisposed against the police department.
I wouldn't call myself that in the sense that I am always against the police department. I simply seek to right the wrongs.
And this is not your first time encountering Kyle Kuzak, correct?
It's not. No, I've encountered Kyle Kuzak on multiple occasions.
And you said that you think he's a little egotistical?
I would agree with that.
And this is also not your first time dealing with Detective Markowitz, correct?
No, it is not.
So you seem to have a somewhat tumultuous past with everybody involved in the police side of the investigation.
I would say I've certainly had my encounters with them.
And you have not been to the crime scene, correct?
No, as a private investigator, I'm limited in the resources I'm able to work with.
And so your argument is largely based on evidence collected by Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak?
Yes, it's based on the evidence I reviewed from the investigation, as well as a partial investigation which I conducted myself.
But you still claim to know what occurred at the crime scene better than the two experienced investigators who were actually at the crime scene?
I would say based on the faulty and rushed investigation which was conducted, I would agree with that.
And you presented different possibilities that may have led to the death of Mr. Brackman, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you're not completely certain that any possibility that you presented is absolutely certain, correct?
Well, no, I don't know that anyone here today could say that what they're proposing is 100% correct.
And your most prominent theory accuses Blair Rollins, another Colorado high school student.
I would certainly say Blair Rollins had much more of a motive to commit this crime.
Yet you have no physical evidence that Rollins was ever present at the crime scene?
No, nor is there any physical evidence that Avery Becker was ever at the crime scene.
But the only reason that you really believe that Rollins may have been involved is due to the actions of their father?
I believe it would be coming from the motive of Mackenzie Bracken representing her father, who was sentenced to life in prison, yes.
But you still accused Rollins of murder, despite the lack of physical evidence suggesting his involvement?
That is correct.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Van Owen, could you explain a little bit why you typically work for the defense?
You see, prosecutors usually get to hire police investigators because it's a lot easier on their pockets, being able to hire someone that's already been assigned to them and working the case. However, you also tend to get what you pay for, which is what the prosecution got in this case with the faulty investigation of Detective Markowitz.
And opposing counsel said that you were accusing Blair Rollins of murder despite physical evidence. Does that seem hypocritical at all to you?
Well, I would certainly say so, considering there's no proof actually tying Avery Becker to the crime scene, as well as the fact that there's no DNA or any other physical evidence that ties Avery Becker to Mackenzie Bracken's home. I'd say it would be pretty hypocritical.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Fallon?
No, Your Honor.
I thank you. This witness may be excused. Any other witnesses for the defense?
No, Your Honor. The defense rests its case.
Okay, I'm going to allow our timekeepers to catch up, and then I'll ask for closing arguments. Okay, we'll first start with closing argument for prosecution.
Your Honor, before I begin, I'd like to request that all remaining time be reserved for rebuttal if the need arises.
Yes, that request is accepted.
Fantastic.
Go ahead.
Factual feud or fabricated fiction? Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. Today you've heard the story of a long simmering feud which was met with a tragic end. On the night of March 6th, 2020, Mackenzie Brackman, an amazing mock trial coach who loved helping his students and was dedicated to their development, died from his stab wound just inches away from his front door. In presenting the prosecution's fact-based case against Avery Becker, you heard from 3 witnesses knowledgeable about the crime. First, you heard from Detective Markowitz, a long-standing officer with multiple years of experience as a detective and countless hours of training. He described for you what he observed the night of the murder. He then placed Avery Becker at the scene of the crime through cell phone records. Then you heard from Alex Cifuentes. Alex described a long-simmering feud between Brackman and Becker. She recounted the anger Avery displayed after being demoted to B team, her sly move to get back onto the A team, and the outburst which ultimately led her to be kicked off of the mock trial team altogether. Finally, you heard from crime scene reconstruction expert Kyle Kuzak. In their expert testimony, Kuzak outlined his reconstruction of the case based on an exhaustive investigation. This reconstruction accounts for all evidence present at the crime scene and establishes a clear picture of what took place the night of the murder. Together, these testimonies tell a story of a factual feud gone terribly, terribly wrong. In the face of this factual feud, the defense has concocted a fabricated fiction, seeking to undermine the truth of this open and shut case. The defense claims that in our prosecution of this case, we relied on framed evidence and faulty police work. They claim that Avery Becker's alibi removes her as a suspect, that in spite of insurmountable evidence, the prosecution jumped to conclusions, and that there is another lead in this case that our expert investigators with years of experience simply failed to pursue. But this fabricated fiction is no match for hard evidence. These frivolous attempts to undermine the truth do not stand up to the testimony provided here today. To begin, Becker's alibi is only supported by one person, Taylor Perkins, the same best friend who gave up her senior season of mock trial to help Avery out of a jam just weeks earlier. And there's no physical evidence to support this alibi. Next, the defense claims our case relies on framed evidence. But the experts have spoken. Crime scene reconstruction expert Kyle Kuzak stated that there was more than enough evidence to come to a concrete conclusion. Moreover, the prosecution's reconstruction of the case takes into account all evidence present at the crime scene, while the defense's fiction fails to do so. Finally, the defense claims our prosecution relied on faulty police work. But today, you have heard from expert officers at the top of their field. Jordan Markowitz is a veteran detective with extensive training in cell phone tracking and records. Kyle Kuzak has 19 years of crime scene reconstruction expertise, is certified by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation as a crime scene reconstruction investigator, and has outlined his rigorous process for data collection, event analysis, and coming to a conclusive reconstruction. These expert witnesses have extensive qualification in their respective fields, but Blake Van Owens, the so-called expert who testified for the defense, does not. Despite testifying to his reconstruction of the crime scene, Van Owens never set foot at the crime scene, has no training or experience in crime scene reconstruction, and clearly harbors a longstanding grudge against the police. Members of the jury, this inexperienced expert has no place to question the work of our true expert detectives. The fact behind this feud is that Avery Becker's relationship with Brackman weighed heavily on her. She claimed that she would get back at Brackman if it was the last thing she did, and that was no empty threat. She sent texts to Alex Cifuentes laying out her plan to trash Mr. Brackman's house, and finally, on the day of the murder, Avery Becker skipped school and was tracked driving to and arriving at Brackman's house at the same time Brackman was murdered. Now, the good people of the jury, it's your turn to decide for yourself which should stand up in the court of law, a factual feud or fabricated fiction. I urge you to find Avery Becker guilty of both charges.
Thank you, counsel. Closing for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution today has attempted to paint the defense's case as a fabricated fiction, yet they themselves present nothing more than framed evidence and faulty police work. Your Honor, members of the jury, today you've heard the case of Avery Becker, a high school mock trial student guilty of nothing more than the occasional prank, certainly not a cold-blooded murderer. Now I'm going to read to you a quote from author Katie Daubs, who analyzes very similar cases to this one. And the quote reads as such: "A common belief that police and prosecutors hold that they intuitively know a bad guy blinds them to innocence. Your Honor, today the prosecution jumped to conclusions and was blind to the numerous amounts of evidence that Avery Becker is truly innocent. Now, today the prosecution holds fully the burden of proof, and they must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker unlawfully and feloniously attempted to commit second-degree burglary at the abode of Mackenzie Brackman. In addition, Avery Becker committed first-degree murder of Coach Avery Brackman. Now, what we've learned today from Avery herself is that Avery had no reason to commit this murder. Sure, Coach Brackman could be hard on her, but this never escalated to anything beyond the occasional harmless prank. Additionally, we've heard from Taylor Perkins that Avery has an alibi for her whereabouts the entire day of which Coach Brackman was murdered. The prosecution presents a Ring doorbell video, and they claim it directly ties Avery Becker to the murderer, and yet the only connection they have is a general height comparison between Avery Becker and a fence. Not only that, but Blair Rollins is a very similar height and stature to Avery Becker. Additionally, I would like to point out that since Avery was with Taylor for the entirety of the day, if the Ring doorbell footage was to truly capture the murderer, there would be two people there, not one. It is far more likely that that one person is Blair Rollins. And frankly, today the prosecution has failed to present that witness because Blair Rollins has fled the state. Now, you've heard from expert Blake Van Owens that the prosecution failed to complete a full investigation, and Detective Blake Van Owens describes the confirmation bias of which the prosecution entered this case with. Let's talk about Detective Markowitz, the prosecution's main detective, who has countless hours of experience that he gained ultimately from a 3-day course on cell phones. This is nothing compared to Dr. Blake Van Owens, or Detective Blake Van Owens' master degree in these very fields. Additionally, Detective Markowitz only spoke to Alex Cifuentes, who is an overly biased and overly aggressive rival of Avery Becker. Detective Markowitz also presented this cell tower data. And as you heard from Blake Van Owens, a phone left at the Fry Shack, which is the most likely location where the phone was lost, could have easily connected to any of the 3 towers. In addition, even the prosecution's Detective Markowitz agrees that it is very possible that Avery didn't have her phone. Now let's talk about Kyle Cusack, a wannabe police officer who entered this case presenting nothing more than faulty police work. Kyle Cusack was not at the scene, jumped to conclusions before looking over all of the evidence, which happened to agree with what he said, and only little bits of it. This is an obvious case of confirmation bias. Even Kyle Cusack agrees that Avery's guilt is out of their knowledge, out of their expertise. And so it is your duty today to determine who is guilty and who is not. And frankly, we have proven to you beyond any, or we don't even need to, we have shown to you more than reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is not guilty in this case. Avery Becker could not have been at the murder, and Avery Becker had no reason to do the murder, not nearly as much motive as Blair Rollins. And so today the defense calls on you to find the defendant not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Decker. Anything in rebuttal for closing from the prosecution?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
As the prosecution, we have the burden of proof in this case, and that is what we have provided. Today, you've heard from experts at the top of their field, using all evidence necessary and pursuing all suspects. Both of our investigators were present at the scene of the crime and followed every lead necessary to come to a definitive conclusion. The facts of this open and shut case are clear. I urge you to side with the facts, convict this murderer, and find Avery Becker guilty of both charges.
Thank you. All right, good job, everybody. Excellent work.